Hey everyone, welcome back to the Layback podcast. Joining us today is Max Bain. Max Bain is the director of pitching, I believe that's the title, at 3PD Performance up in Michigan. So this is our second guy from 3PD. If you guys remember, we had SJ Musso not too long ago on the pod, and Max, who was talked about briefly and teased maybe as having some pretty solid stories, is now joining us. So hopefully we don't string anyone along. I do like to think ahead of time these stories should be pretty good. If they aren't, I think we can all just blame SJ. He'll take all of that for us. Has nothing to do with me and nothing to do with Max. So I guess SJ, thanks in advance for taking the blame for anything that doesn't go right today. Regardless, Max, thanks for joining us and looking forward to this chat.
Thank you for having me. I will do my best to not disappoint with any of the stories today.
For sure. I don't know how much of this gets buried in your current day to day. You're obviously wearing the Tennessee Smokies hat. I say obviously, it's camo and just with the TS. I don't know how many people really recognize TS and think, oh, yeah, of course, Cubs minor league affiliate. I know that one right off the jump. But yes, you are a former Cubs minor leaguer. I don't know if that gets talked about too much in your day to day now that your life is pretty much just trying to help high school, college, and the occasional pro guy be as good as he can possibly be. So I guess the initial part of this is going to be getting to pro ball. Before you got to pro ball, I know you were a D2 dude like me. I spent time down at Eckerd College. I know you're a Northwoods guy. So tell me about life in the GLIAC.
Yeah, so I played at Northwood from 2015 to 2019, and I went in as a guy that was 80-82, probably wouldn't get a Division II opportunity today, but I left there as a guy who was 88 to 91, and I was starting, so it was probably 86 to 91. I had a little bit of pre-draft interest as I was leaving college from a couple of organizations, and nothing ended up working out. And I think the reason behind that is, one, the velocity, but two, the other part of the story that I've talked about a little bit in the past, but I was 305 pounds. I was a big dude. So, I say 86 to 91 just because I fatigued pretty easily being that weight, but I wasn't ready for professional baseball. And looking back, I'm thankful I didn't get drafted then. And I had a phenomenal time at Northwood, couple conference championships, hosted a regional, was in the regional for 3 years, 3 consecutive years, got to be in that rotation at the end of my career. Like it was a very, very cool experience. Probably the most fun I ever had playing the game was at Northwood. So left Northwood, draft comes and goes, don't get my name called, and I end up signing a contract to play in the USPBL in Utica, Michigan, for the Utica Unicorns. So through 20 innings or so there, struggled with command a little bit. I was overhauling the delivery. At that league, they have a ideology that they apply, delivery value system. And I was kind of overhauling what I was doing with the idea that if I did what they were asking me to do, that would help me not only progress, but it would also put me at the top of the list to be marketed to pro organizations. Throughout that summer, still struggled. Like I said, command, still kind of an issue, was still 88 to 92, but I was also a 1 to 2 inning guy. So you're seeing a lot more 90s, 91s than you are 87s for that matter. I went into that offseason with the idea that I was going to give baseball everything I had. Coming to the end of that summer, I had the idea in my mind that I've played enough independent baseball. I'm good. Like, I don't need to do this anymore. Or I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go play affiliate baseball. So I put everything into that offseason that I possibly could. And that's when I met the guys here at the building I currently work at. So I was doing my throwing through here, and I was also doing my lifting through Eric Cressy. And that's where I really started to get educated on everything that was available, which I think I was in the right spot at the right time with where access to information was and just the exponential increase that we had as athletes. Training myself in the morning, I'm training guys at night. It is long hours in the gym by myself with clients at night. And I end up going from a guy that shows you 92 in the fall to showing you 97 in the spring. Part of that had to do with very thankful for my parents. They let me live at home. They cooked everything. It was all good food. So the body's changing a little bit. I ended up signing that winter. So this would be 2021. Ended up signing then, 2020, about 6 weeks before the pandemic hit. I'm weighing like 265 at this point. I go in for my first mini camp and I look around, I'm like, man, I'm still not a good athlete. Like these guys are still leaps and bounds ahead of me. And if everything that happened of COVID, I think I was thankful for another year to really prepare to play minor league baseball. So we get sent home after Rudy Gobert touched the mic and I spend all summer in this building, and I believe I threw 90 innings in here, just grinding, right? Trying to go through that workload, knowing that I'm probably going to have a high volume the following year. I want to train that as best as I can, and simulate a season. I think going that entire summer without throwing would have been a massive mistake as it pertained to my health in the subsequent years. End up getting down to like 235. So now I'm finally feeling like this really, really good athlete. And my best friend and I, this is right around Thanksgiving of 2020. My best friend and I, hey, you know what? I'm looking for a change of scenery. Like, I want to go do something different. I want to be around the best of the best. We end up buying an Airbnb out in Driveline or in Seattle and train at Driveline for 5 weeks. Go there. One of my favorite stories from there is I had my first high intent day. I threw my first plyo that day and I took a Driveline record. So I was like, you know what? We're just going to turn this into a plyo velo day. And I ended up taking 7 of them that day.
Holy shit.
Yeah, yeah. So that was like my moment at Driveline. I had from the stretch, I threw a blue ball 78, which was awesome. That was very, very cool. So we're getting close to Christmas, and Washington handled COVID a little bit differently than other states. We believe that Driveline's going to shut down again. I'm 2 months out from my first camp. I buy a flight from Washington to Phoenix. And I just moved down there with the idea that I'm going to go. I already had a job lined up at X2. I'm just going to start training there, and I'm going to meet one of the guys. He's going to have an extra bedroom, and I'll figure it out from there, which is exactly what happened. Shout out to Rio Gomez for letting me use your spare bedroom. So that's kind of when I get involved with Dean Jackson, Eric Sim, Bauer, all these guys that are training down there at that time. So I'm splitting time at X2. I'm training at Bauer's building. I'm throwing live ABs over there. And I'm just meeting this whole circle of professional baseball players that I had never been exposed to before. And I think that really accelerated my development from the competitive atmosphere. So I go into my first camp, which is 21, and I'm sitting 97 to 99. And it was so empowering on the mound. Like the confidence I had to just go in and throw, and the true belief that nobody was going to touch me, that was something I don't know that I had ever felt before. And it's one of the best feelings I'll ever have. End up getting the opportunity to start. I think I was trained to go in as a reliever, but when the Chicago Cubs ask you to start games, you don't say no. So end up starting games in South Bend in 2021 and pitched pretty well. I think I had a 4.2 or 4.3 that year, but I don't think that tells the whole story because the back half of the year, I think I had closer to like a 2.5.
Also, modern baseball
really,
ERA doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. So
should I go pull up your FIP? Maybe that'll be more telling.
Go for it. So got the chance to start games, logged 100 innings or so then, and ended up moving back to Michigan that following offseason with the idea that I was going to do everything I was doing in Arizona, and I'm going to put myself in a position to go take a AA spot in 22. 22 camp goes well, end up going to AA, or end up going back to high A for about 6 weeks where I held, ERA is a pointless stat, held a 2 there for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and I go up to AA. My first start in AA, and I got a couple teammates that'll vouch for me here, but my first start, I come off the mound in my first inning. I go, hey guys, like, does anybody's ankle feel weird, like throwing up there? Like, is this mound like something I need to know about? I sprained my right ankle throwing. And I don't know if I was just trying too hard, like sitting too deep. I don't know what I was doing, but I sprained my right ankle. And I attempted to continue to throw on it because in affiliate baseball, you go on the IL, you don't know if your spot's going to be there when you get back. So I threw on it for 6 weeks. I'm doing a lot of things differently just because I'm compensating from the ground up. I'm walking the house. I'm just not throwing well. 6 weeks later, we're in Biloxi, and their landing spot's dug out. I sprained my left ankle. Like I'm Carson Wentz out there. I got 2 sprained ankles out there. And that's finally when I hit the IL for the first time. Once I rehab that, they end up sending me back to Arizona to go on the dev list. And throughout this entire time, I think one of the things that I take with me here is what I went through mentally. And the reason I say that is because I was so hard on myself throughout that entire kind of overhaul of my body and how I moved, just my development as an athlete, that during that time I was really just compensating all over the place. I never let myself have that. I never cut myself the slack of being injured. I always just said, hey, I got to figure this out. What am I doing what am I doing wrong? What's the fix to this? And it was like every time I took the mound, I was trying to make up for the last 5 outings. And I think I just put myself in a spot where I dug deeper and deeper and deeper. Ultimately, I was depressed. Like I wasn't confident while I was on the mound. I wasn't having fun outside of it. And I think a lot of my teammates would probably share the same story from the outside looking in. So I went through a lot there. And I think at the same time, really being the first time that I struggled in minor league baseball, I was worried about my job too. So I'm out there. I'm not confident. I don't believe in my stuff. I'm worried about losing my job. I'm worried about all the wrong things, right? I'm worried about the things that I cannot control. So, I get sent into the offseason in 22 with the idea that, hey, we need to work on commanding the ball a little bit better. Obviously, right? I think I walked like 32 and 27 innings. Not great. Kids at home, don't do that. So come back in 23 and things are going pretty well. I have a little shoulder flare up right as we're leaving camp. I'm going to go back to Double A. I backed up a couple big league games, which is probably the coolest thing I did. And the day before we're supposed to leave, my shoulder's just acting up, like not good. Now I can hardly play catch, like no bueno. So I end up getting held back a little bit and go through that entire rehab. All like everything's going well. Have my flight out to go do my rehab assignment in South Bend. I wake up that morning. I can't get out of bed because of my back. So I'm just battling one thing after the next, right? And at this point, they're also telling me like, hey, you're going to need to compete for your job at some point. Like this is going to have to happen. So go through the entire back rehab and my shoulder's killing me the entire time. I'm in rookie ball games. And instead of being, even 94, 96, which is where I kind of regressed to as I started games, I'm in rookie ball games and I'm sitting like 90 to 93. Like it's not pretty. I'm doing everything I can. The Voltaren, the atomic bomb, like whatever I need to just go out on the mound and throw because I'm going to need to compete for my spot. And ultimately it was good enough to get sent back to South Bend. And I think at that point, maybe 4 weeks into my stint in South Bend, I kind of realized that the end of the road was coming in terms of my job status with the team. And that's when I stopped. That's kind of when I got out of my head. Was I finally accepted like, hey, this is going to end, right? I'm not who I was, or I'm not who they signed. And that's okay. I was content with it at that point. I'm just going to go have fun with this. Like every outing I throw might be the last time I throw. You never know if they're going to bring somebody up and they just need you to fill the innings that night. So I'm just going to go have fun with this. Magically started throwing better. So I'm still 993, but I'm getting results. I'm in zone. I'm not walking guys. Like I'm ahead in counts. Like I'm doing all the right things that are correlated with outs. So I go into the offseason with the idea that I'm going to throw 3 times a week and get all the inflammation out of my shoulder. Do that, feeling okay, still taking a little bit of Voltaren at the time, and start ramping back up, have some bullpens throughout December, and I get to the point where I can't throw anymore. I come back in after a bullpen and I'm struggling to throw the ball 50 miles an hour. That was kind of the tipping point for me in terms of like, hey, I need to get this looked at. It's this whole process of going to the team doc and doing the PT and doing everything that you can to stay off the table. I ended up getting surgery on my shoulder April 8th of 2024. And I was let go shortly before that. Once we had scheduled the surgery date, that kind of did it. And from that point on, I wasn't in a position to say that, or I wasn't in a position to be an effective professional baseball player. So that kind of brought the end of my career. Now, a week after I got the surgery, I kind of settled on the idea of not playing anymore. I had about a week where, I'm going to get back. I'm going to throw 100. I'm going to do all that stuff. And then I kind of looked around and I go, you know what? I'm turning 27. I kind of like being at home with my wife, like being at home with the dog. I'm not missing stuff anymore. I really enjoyed life at home. So I took the job here as the director of pitching with 3PD. And from there, it's been implementing everything that I have learned along the way. And I think one of the things that happens a lot of the times with guys who have played pro ball is they implement a lot of things that work for them. And I think what's different about me is I looked around, like I observed all the time while I was playing. And I went through a lot of the development strategies as well. But there are things that I teach that didn't work for me. And I value that so much because I saw it work for other guys. And I attest that to, maybe I wasn't as confident as I needed to be to implement it correctly, or maybe I was just hurt at the time, or whatever it may be. But I saw it work for so many other guys. Why would I not give these guys the opportunity? Why would I not give them the resources to help them progress their own careers, even if it didn't work for me?
And that gets us to the point of now picking apart the story. So thank you for getting us to where we are now. I love the timeline. And of course, there's going to be a ton of questions flying your way. Okay. First and foremost, we are loosely connected on when the world shut down from Rudy Gobert touching the mic. I actually was coaching against Northwood in a college baseball game the night that college baseball got shut down. So we might not have been in the same location, but I was coaching against Northwood, so roughly the same thing. We were hosting Northwood while they were on their spring break. down in St. Pete, Florida. I was coaching D2 ball at Eckerd College, and I believe it
Boys.
was Thursday, March 13th. We were playing a Thursday game, just the way things worked out when you're hosting spring break games, and the world came crashing down on us. We're meeting with the coaches across the field, and we're like, guys, like if we don't start right now, we might not be able to play, and we don't even know if we're going to play another game for the rest of the year. So it turned
Right.
into impromptu senior night right there against Northwood. It was really cool. It was an awesome experience to share with those dudes. But of course, like nobody really knew what to do, so we didn't even shake hands after the game. It was just like a wave to the opposite dugout and saying thank you. So yeah, that's my quick Northwood
That's
story.
crazy. That's
Yes, yeah. And then while you were going through that, I was also trying to do a quick dive to see if we ever overlap playing against each other, knowing where you're from. I know I'm a little bit older than you. I'm 32 now. I was my freshman year of college, freshman fall was 2012. It's funny, like the little things you dig up. I saw you grew up playing for the South Oakland A's. When I was a kid playing travel ball, I swear all our toughest games were against the South Oakland A's. Granted,
no
the age group's a little bit different. Who knows the kids that they're playing when they're 12 years old or whatever. But
sure.
I I wish you had a list where you could read off where all these kids went that I used to compete against. Not going to make you do that on air right now.
That was like the Brett Sunday, Greg Fettis, that era. South Oakland A's. Like those guys were ballers. And that's who I grew up like. We go to the building, we see those guys getting their work in. That's the guy you stop and watch.
Well,
So
that makes me happy to hear that those kids were actually good in your eyes because I remember playing against them and every single weekend it was a battle. We'd look at our pool play and be like, "Oh, we're playing them again." Who would have thought? But
funny enough, they both went on to play for the Oakland A's.
that's actually comical. I need to go back and look at these guys now. We're gonna put a tab in this, and I'm gonna come back
Yeah.
for some offline questions because I now need to
Yeah.
do some digging and talk to some of my old buddies from junior high and stuff. But
Yeah.
all right, so in your process, you went to the USPBL. This probably isn't where you expected to have a lot of questions coming at you, but I
Sure.
also was offered a USPBL contract at one point. That's where I was kind of at my weird purgatory spot in my baseball career of whether I was going to continue or not. And I thought the USPBL provided a really solid ground to do that. I just never got to a point where I was healthy enough where I thought I could go beyond the USPBL. So ultimately,
Sure.
I called it quits instead of going forward and just being like a replacement level dude. That wasn't my goal coming back from shoulder injury. But you were
Sure.
there, you got to experience it as a pitcher. You got to experience DVS and probably the height of Justin Orenduff and the whole system. How did you feel
Yep.
about trying to take on I'm probably going to bastardize this, but the old school style of pitching. How was that implemented in your career? Because I know that's kind of the goal. Take these guys like the Sandy Koufaxes, the Nolan Ryans, the big leg kicks, generate as much momentum as possible and get down the
Yeah.
mound super efficiently. Now, of course, efficiently
Yep.
means something different to everybody, but they have their own particular score. How did you take that on? Did you feel good about it? Did it fit with your style and who you were at the time?
You know, I don't know that I knew any better at the time. So I took it on believing that, hey, these people have great intent with what they're trying to do. And I've always appreciated that about DVS. I think when you put guys in a position to be healthy long term, I appreciate the intent of which they're going about it. Now, looking back, there are some things biomechanically that I probably disagree on in terms of what they teach versus what I teach. And that's going to happen anywhere in the baseball industry. That's not saying that they're wrong or I'm right or whatever. But I really embraced it because there was quantitative feedback. And they were able to dial this down to one number in terms of valuing your DVS score. They posted it every week. So I think a lot of guys use that as a way to kind of measure their progress and how they were moving. Now, do I personally like the idea of boiling it down to one number for every guy? No. Yeah, I think I appreciate it because I didn't know any better at the time. Knowing what I know now, I think there's different anatomical pros and cons of every guy, and they're all going to move a little bit differently. Putting everybody in this one scale or boxing them into this one approach, I don't know that we can unequivocally say that leads to long-term health for more guys. Now, that may be correlated with it, but it all depends on who your subset of athletes are going to be as well. So I think that league, if you had the freedom to explore your own ideologies there and kind of implement your own process there, I think that league is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal spot for mixing the training environment with having the game atmosphere as well. You're not traveling. You're playing 3 to 4 games a week, so you're going to throw once or twice tops, and it's kind of a way to mitigate the workload that comes in pro ball. So I'm sure there could be arguments for whether that prepares you for pro ball or not, but in terms of what they're trying to accomplish with a development league, I think it's perfect for what they're trying to do.
You mentioned your observatory qualities and how much just sitting and watching impacted who you are now. What were things then from the USPBL that you feel like you have implemented? Was it just trying to give guys objective feedback? Was that maybe even the first time that objectivity became a key part of assessments for you?
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things that I like about my job now. And one of the things I like giving to guys is just objective feedback. Now, I believe what we do goes far beyond objectivity. I think there's a lot more subjectivity into this process and developing guys than maybe others realize. But I do think athletes, especially now, really appreciate objectivity. One of the things I heard from Kyle Bodie was talking on a podcast about this. I think it was a drive line or it was bat flips and nerd. I can't remember exactly which one it was. But he talked about how gamifying this process is so big for kids. It can be so big for kids because their whole life has been surrounded by data, right? Whether it's video games and it's Call of Duty, it's the kill death ratio, or everything that they do is gamified. So why wouldn't we take the same approach with kind of teaching them the numbers that matter along the way, right? Or showing them angles or VB or whatever it may be, spin efficiency. So I think having that objective feedback is massive for the next wave of athletes.
I like that you mentioned the subjectivity side along with objectivity. Objectivity is great because it provides the information, it provides the data, and probably the nitty gritty details. But what are details if you don't have the filler that comes with it, the bridge
Right.
from detail to detail? And that's where the subjective comes into play. And that's why I know this is starting to change the nature of the discussion a little bit, but sometimes that's probably a struggle of remote training for a lot of guys because you don't get to talk about the subjective or talk about the field quite as much. I don't know if you experienced that much, whether it was in your career development as a player or even what you're doing now, but sometimes I feel when you're working remotely with a guy, it becomes so easy to just rely on the hard information, what you're seeing on video, what you're seeing on a recorded TrackMan plot or what have you, versus being in the trenches with someone and talking about what you're feeling and trying to relate it to something and going through motions as you're just trying to progress. If you want to talk about that specific concept in your coaching career, or maybe if you dealt with that at times while you were playing, because you obviously went everywhere across the states to try to be as good as you could be. And I'm sure at times that meant trying to piece together information from different places when not everyone is seeing you at all times or has the full complete story.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're absorbing different opinions, but it's almost like you're trying to build more knowledge in certain areas or certain subjects of the development. So you're trying to form your own opinion on it based on what you know. And I think tying this back into remote training as well, the way I go about things is very much quality over quantity. I would rather, obviously the business end of this, but I'd rather charge more and have less athletes than charge less and have more athletes. But when guys commit to work with me, I take pride in that. I guess furthermore, because I believe that I do my best work with the guys that are high-level high school guys or high-level college arms, your pro guys. I think that's where I do my best work personally. So when it comes to remote training, I agree. I think it's really hard to learn the individual, learn their habits or their kind of their personality, if you will, and how to coach them when they're not there. I don't think it's impossible though. And I guess bringing this all together, I don't have 60 remote athletes. That's not how I do things. I don't have 100 remote athletes. Every guy that I work with is going to they're going to spend time on site. They're going to spend a little bit of time remote, and I got to fill the gaps, right? So when my college guys go back to school here, I'm going to be in contact with those guys 2, 3, 4 times a week to make sure that they're staying on top of their stuff. 2, they're communicating anything new that they're learning. 3, clarifying some of the ideas that they're hearing. Whatever it may be, I want to make sure that I'm there for those guys. I tell them all, like, hey man, like you have a fun Saturday night and you don't have a ride home, like call me. Like I will be there for you. But that's the type of guy I want to be for these athletes because I care about them, and I don't think I can say that and then also take 150 guys. I think the quality over quantity approach is very much where I like to stick, just because I know how thorough the process needs to be to reach just one individual.
I do want to go back and talk about your time, I guess not just at Driveline, but the time you also spent with Bauer and Dean Jackson and X2. I'm assuming Luke Haggerty was in there if you're talking
Oh yeah,
X2. So some
yeah,
complete mavericks of the industry. Because when you were doing Driveline, you talk about 2019, 2020. At that point, weighted balls were the scariest thing on the planet to half the population. And then you're joining up with the leaders of that posse in Arizona with Dean Jackson and Trevor Bauer and obviously Eric Sim, but this crew of, I guess, vigilantes for as far as baseball is concerned, guys just bucking the system. And obviously Luke Haggerty just kind of like rewriting the way things are done, making a baseball career as a 40-year-old throwing 98 plus. I mean,
yeah,
you were with some intense different dudes. So I'd love
yeah.
now for you to talk about things that you picked from those guys along the way.
It's funny because Luke was at that mini camp that I was at in 2020 when I signed. And you have all these minor league guys walking around, and then you got Luke walking around. And I'm sure you've been around Luke. He's 6'8", 250, or 260 probably, of just big frame, wide shoulders. Like he looks like the director of strength walking around there. So I knew who he was, but I didn't know who he was at that time. So when late 2020 happened and I get this flight out there, I just messaged with Luke. I'm like, hey man, like, do you need another throwing trainer? And sure enough, thank goodness, because I loved every minute I had around Luke. And the guy's full of stories. And his career arc is special as well. So getting around these guys, I think the one thing I learned the most was it's hard to boil it down to one thing. The borderline, no, that's not the right word. The I coined it blind confidence. The blind confidence that these dudes had was incredible. The idea that Eric might tag you for a base hit, right? But he's not going to do it again, right? I've been doing this too long and I've had too much success to believe that one hit's going to define that, or two hits even. There's no chance that guy's going to get me again. And just the way these guys went about their business, it didn't matter if it took 3 or 6 hours for a training day. They were going to do it as intently as they could. Every rep meant everything. There was never a box to check. It was, how can I do this to the best of my ability? And I think that's one thing that really helped me find out how good I could be. Because at the end of the day, one of the gosh, what's his name? I'm blanking on his name right now. He's with the Casey Weathers.
Yeah.
The how good am I video. That was one thing that resonated with me as I'm going through that first season. Like that became my favorite video ever. And because at the end of the day, it's all about honesty. I think when you ask adults, when they look back at their career, whether they played low A or they played in the big leagues for 10 years, they're not going to say, oh, you know what, I reached my goal of being a big leaguer. It's no, I figured out what I was capable of, right? It probably didn't matter what jersey you're wearing. Might if you're making 7 or 10 figures, but it's about the honesty of how good you can be, and wherever that lands you is wherever it lands you. And I think that's something I wish I would have probably stuck to a little bit long, a little bit better, especially throughout 22 and 23. But I was all about that idea while I was down there in 2021. And maybe success played a role in that, but I really just cared about being as good as I could possibly be. And I think that came from being around those guys. It's just this never ending pursuit of, could I do this better? Could I do more weight? Could I throw this harder? Is there a different cue I could try? It was this never ending pursuit of getting better. And I thought that was the coolest thing.
I'm going to take your initial phrasing and maybe progress it a step further or two. So from the outside, I totally agree with you that it looks like blind confidence because from the outside, we don't see the work that goes in. So you
Right.
look at these individuals like he's arrogant. Like why does he think he's so good? And then if you get
Yep.
in the weeds and look at the 6-hour training days and look at the effort that goes into cooking, eating, recovery, mobility, throwing, intentionality in every single aspect of the game, not just being on the mound and trying to K a guy. or not just trying to, I don't know, pull down 100 miles per hour plus and whatever, lift heavy weights. Like there's so much more to it than that. Those guys checked every single box, and it sounds like you were adopted into that fraternity in a sense, that the confidence shifts from blind to 100% earned, whether people see it or not. If
That's,
you,
yeah, that's fair.
yeah, if you know that you did every single thing you could, like you said, the Casey Weathers video, you have earned every bit of belief that you have in yourself at that point. Whether it results in outs or not, I mean, you know you put in the work and nobody can take that away from you.
It's funny now that you say that. I'm tracing this back in my head, and I got asked on a podcast in 2021 before my first camp if I had any superstitions or anything like that, and I responded with no, and then I hated superstitions because they're a substitute for the work, right? If you need something, that if you need to put your left cleat on first to go believe in yourself, then brother, you've been skipping dots in the, like you've been skipping things in the process. Right. If you do every single rep, everything with your best intention, whether it's a bullpen rep, a touch and feel rep, or a hip 90-90, right? If you do everything with your best intent, then there's no reason you shouldn't feel confident while you're out there. Right. I think you earn, I coin it blind confidence, but you earn that, right? You earn the opportunity, you earn the right to have that via the training days, right? And the consistency that you show within them.
Now, continuing the theme that we've kind of unintentionally got on of tell the story, come back to it, and then apply it to daily life now. How are you taking that and preaching that to your guys? Because it's one thing to just tell a 17-year-old or a 22-year-old, you need to check every single box if you really want to be as good as you can be. But then it's a completely different thing for that kid to see it or grasp it or apply it to their actual career. So, are there certain things that you've been able to do to better communicate that?
It's tough. I think in the private sector, you're going to have those guys no matter where you're at, right? That pay for the results instead of the paying for the process. But what I do is I give my guys so much. I give them a ton. And not that doesn't mean that they're in here for 6 hours a day, but I expose them to a lot of the resources. I expose them to pre-throw, movement prep, throwing prep, plyos, throwing, the lifts, the post throw, the flex pro. Like I give them everything that I can. And they're all under the impression, we have this talk before they start, like this is an 80-20 equation, right? This is 20% me, and I'm going to do my best with that, and I'm going to kill it. And that's because that's what all of my time goes into, is making sure that your program is dialed, right? And everything in that is driven by what's going to make you better. 80% of this is going to be you, right? You, the athlete, and you got to do everything with your best intention. And you have to stack those days, whether it's a red day, green day, or whatever it may be. And every guy just, yeah, for sure. And you're going to have your guys who do it, and you're going to have your guys who don't. The hard thing I've learned about communicating this is that I think some of the most valuable life lessons, this being one of them, are learned via experience. And it's not something that I can tell them. I have a subset of athletes that I have to let fail, right? I have to give them the opportunity to fail. And what that looks like, probably what you're thinking, right? The number on the velo board doesn't show up the way they want it to, right? So I have to give them that block. I have to burn that time letting them fail before I can really kind of get through to them like, hey, this is what it's going to take, right? And during that time, you're kind of keeping a loose log of like, okay, well, this guy's banged 3 lifts in the last 2 weeks, and the ones he did do, maybe he did 2 of the supersets and he banged C and D blocks. But you kind of reference that when it's time to communicate it. That's what you reference, right? Hey, we're not taking pre-throw seriously. We're not doing the lifts, and we're just expecting all these tweaks or fixes to come from mechanical side, right? And that's not going to be the case. I think far more often than not, especially when you talk about your group of high performers, a mechanical tweak is not going to bring the dividends that the weight room and 3 meals a day will, right? The largest return is going to be on dominating the weight room and dominating your nutrition and dominating your sleep, right? We can get your arm on time. I'm not worried about that. But that's also not going to take you from 93 to 98. You being 6'2", 225 instead of 6'2", 180 is going to do it.
I think that's a really good point. When you just think about low hanging fruit, because everybody wants to pay, as you said, for the fix. They want to pay for the result, not pay for the process. And I forget who told me this, and I struggle with the word mentor because everybody kind of tosses that around. I feel like that's the fun kind of fad word to say right now is like identify your mentors and follow them. But so much of the training space, I think, has these mentor-esque people, and those are the ones that are able to get the best out of their clientele. Whether
Yeah.
it's being able to communicate the best, whether it's being able to actually demonstrate the lifestyle and like bring it every single day, because ultimately, I mean, most of these kids who are playing ball spend more time with their coaches than they do anybody else in their life for like at least that dedicated amount of time. Is there anybody else that they are spending 3 hours of their time with, just 100% dedicated to that individual in a certain day? No, because they have a different teacher for every single class. The chances that you're talking with your parent for 3 hours straight any given day is,
Yeah.
I mean, that's slim to none. Really, the coaches and the people that you surround yourself with for the things you care about most are ultimately going to have the most influence. So I'm sure that's a tough burden to juggle as a coach or as a mentor, but it does require you to bring it every single day.
Yeah. And I think too, what I value in this job is not only making good pitchers, right? It's not about making good pitchers. That's a nice benefit of what we do in the framework that we've built. But I value the idea of creating good human beings as well, right? I value the relationships I create with my clients. I had a client text me. I tell this story all the time, and he's going to hate me for telling me this because he's going to know exactly who he is. I had a client text me early February on a Saturday night at 11 o'clock. And this kid's a power forearm. Like he's very, very good. He goes, just out of the blue, he goes, my girlfriend just dumped me. And I'm like, this is so weird that he's texting me this at Saturday night at 11 o'clock. And then I sat on it for 5 minutes and I go, you know what? Like, this kid thought to bring that to me. And I think that was a really, like, that was a good representation. Although I didn't want him to get dumped, I thought that was a good representation of the things that he trusted to bring to me. Right. That's a good representation of the relationship that I've built with that athlete. So I use that story with guys all the time. Like, dude, tell me everything that's going on in life. Everything that you're comfortable telling me, tell me. Because I think that helps, one, just build the relationship here. And two, we could talk about the programming side of things and whatnot. But I think it's all about the amount of trust that these guys have in you. Right. So the more comfortable they get telling you stuff and the more you're willing to talk with them about it and kind of be a life coach to some degree, the more you're building trust within athletes. And I think you can do that. It's a very thorough way of building the buy-in to the process.
I'm gonna have a really shitty segue here, but it involves trust. So that's where this segue ultimately is going to go. You experienced a weird litany of injuries in your career for the most part. How were you able
Yep.
to maintain trust with an organization? Like it's different in your setting now when individuals are paying you, right? I mean, let's not forget
Right.
that, which is hard. Like yes, you have these awesome relationships with these guys, and I'm not taking a single bit of that away. They're obviously paying you and it's part of the service for you to be the absolute best you can be every single day, every single waking hour for these individuals. Then you have an industry or you have a company paying you to be at your best, and you're just not. Whether it's your ankle, whether it's your shoulder, whether it's your back, how were you able to maintain trust then in your organization that they would do right by you, knowing that at any given moment someone could take your spot?
That is a phenomenal question. And I think I attribute that to knowing who was on the staff. And I'm going to reference a few people here, although that does not encompass everybody. But Casey Jacobson was our coordinator at the time. And he had spent some time at Driveline and he had been in my corner from the start. And that's a guy who spent a lot of time with me in 21, spent a lot of time with me in 22, and a little bit less in 23, naturally. But he's a guy I still talk to this day. You know, when the Cubs were in town in Detroit in early June, he's the guy who left me tickets to go watch the guys play. So I still talk to Casey all the time. Having that relationship prior to everything kind of going south allowed me to still trust him. And we also had Clayton Mortensen, who had been in the big leagues, and he's been, if you get the chance to talk to Clayton, please do. He is a phenomenal human being, and he's the guy who helped me kind of find my love for baseball again. And he's proud owner of one of our fantasy football teams in our league. I got to be around Clayton all that time in 2023 when he was the pitching coach in South Bend, and just kind of getting to talk his ear off and build that relationship with him. I knew that at minimum he was doing his best to have my back. I think beyond that, we had guys in the weight room that were so good at their jobs, man. Like Steph Simmons, Connor Rooney, Alan Cooper, Mark Weissman. Like these guys were the best. And I knew where they came from. A lot of them had driveline backgrounds. Mark, in particular, he was a fullback at Iowa football. And he's just the best human being. Knowing these guys, having the relationships with them outside of baseball kind of helped me like have the relationship inside of baseball as well. And to be honest with you, part of that also comes from like I had done it my way for the entirety of my time there. I remember as an undrafted free agent, I walked into my first mini camp and I told Craig Breslow, like, I've been doing Cressy stuff and it's kind of got me here. Like I'm probably going to keep doing that. Like I'd like to keep doing that. And they let me, which looking back, like he's a GM of the Red Sox. That's kind of crazy. So I had done everything my way to that point. So part of me felt like, okay, I have these guys here. I know I trust them. I'm going to do it their way. And I'm going to let them have the objectivity in the process and not being too close to it to kind of help guide me through this, because I'm not sure that I'm not confident enough to say that I can do this right now.
You bringing up Cressy sparked a question in my mind here that I think is very pertinent for a lot of the listeners on the podcast. How did you choose who you wanted to work with? You obviously knew you needed to make significant gains. You had trained in Michigan. You made significant jumps to go from an 80 to 82 18-year-old to a 91-ish, whatever, 22-year-old. But then you sought out Driveline, you sought out Cressy, you sought out people across the country. And those were probably the biggest names at the time, at least on the hot list. But now looking at it where a kid can go literally anywhere to train, whether it's in their backyard, they can get on the phone, they can call someone, they can do anything remote. How did you, and now if you were an athlete in today's age, how would you decide where you're going to go train?
I would say that when I made that decision, first off, I will say Cressy was very much driven by my dad. He was on Cressy for a long time, and I don't know how he got in touch with, or like how he got informed of them or whatever it may be, but I had that idea for probably 2 months that I was going to go there. And I'd also like the time to take it, like to shout out Frank Minamino, who worked down there at the time. He is outstanding at what he does. And he was an intern at the time, but he walked me through my 3 or 4 day assessment, and I built that relationship with him while I was down there, and he would text me every other day. Hey, how's things going? Got to the point where I was just paying him to write my lifts outside of whatever he was doing, whether it be with Cressy or Driveline or, whatever he was doing. I would just send him a Venmo and he would just build me a program. Like, I think Driveline's a little bit more of an obvious selection just because I think at that time in my career, I accepted I didn't know what I was doing. Right. Obviously, what I had done to that point did not put me in the position where I wanted to be. So I think for athletes now, it's really tough because the market is saturated with facilities. But I do think it's not at the point right now where you could just go to Tread and sign up, or, go to Driveline. I'm not singling them out by any means. You can go to any facility and just sign up and believe that you're going to get the process or get the results that you're looking for, whatever it may be. I think now you're in a spot where you kind of have to do your own research and get to know these people at the facilities. Every guy that I take on personally, I have a one-on-one phone call with them. I bring them in for a meeting. I spend probably 3 or 4 days with them before I get started, before I do anything, right? And typically the first 4 days are, 5 days beyond that, so 9 days in total. That's all me just kind of like learning them and watching them and seeing what they like to do, right? How they move, what do they do best, what do they not do well, before I even build the program. So I think the athletes are in a significantly more disadvantaged position because of the rise of social media coaches, the guys that have the one quick fix to, help you gain 8 miles an hour or whatever it may be. I think it's on the athletes now to reach out and kind of carve their own path and figure out what they want to be bought into. And that takes phone calls, that takes emails, that takes text messages or FaceTimes or whatever it may be. These guys have to go and seek that out. You're going to have your guys that sign up just because they see the results, but I think the guys who are really looking to get better and have an idea of what they're looking for, those guys have to reach out to those people and figure out who they're going to be working with. Because I think now more than ever, the person you work with is as important as it can be. So I think it was a little easier for me to pick a facility back then just because of where the market was at. But I think now with the amount of facilities, I think it's really on the individual to get to know the staff that they're going to be working with.
This is probably a decent time now for you to talk a little bit about what sets 3PD apart. I know you've talked a lot about the people and the relationships
Yeah.
that you build, but ultimately you also need to get guys better beyond just having really good
Yeah.
relationships.
With
So please take the reins here and tell me a little bit about why you think 3PD is really blowing up in the industry and doing so well with all the guys.
I think what sets us apart is the length that we go to build the program, and it's a really simple foundation. I was talking to Lucas Still, and one of the things that he mentioned to me, shout out Lucas down at Tread, but one of the things he said to me was every time he writes a program, he starts with what does the athlete need in order to get better, and he talked about all these facilities that are tied to a product, right? And we know who they are, but I think that kind of reshaped how I thought about this as well. So I think what makes us different is the individual holding so much weight in the process. Now, obviously the relationships are important, getting guys better is important, but it's what that individual needs is going to be different case to case. I have a lot of guys, or I had a lot of guys this past winter who came in at 88, 91, 92, and they're graduating this spring, and they all have their own little quirks as pitchers. But the big thing for me was, okay, obviously what you're doing right now works. You're 17, you're throwing 92. I don't need you to be a big leaguer tomorrow, right? I need you to grow, and I need you to have success with who you are along the way so that you remain confident, you remain bought into what you're doing, and we have this slow and steady growth rather than just trying to reinvent the wheel tonight. So I think I put a lot more weight into the game. I think one of the most common connotation with the private sector is all we care about is velo. And I think that's important, no doubt, because it's one of the most correlated things with having success on the mound. But at the end of the day, I think these guys, especially your high level guys, whether they be high school or college or pro, need to understand how to navigate counts, how to leverage their stuff. Where does my stuff play best? What is my goal in a 1-1 count? What am I trying to do with this pitch? Where am I going to start it? How have I sequenced this at bat? Am I going to throw my sinker down away to lefties? Probably not, because that plays into the natural bat path. Or maybe I just won't use it as often. I'm going to lean on the four seam cut carry up and on the hands because that's going to be a cheat code for weak contact. What is my goal within the situation that I'm trying that I am currently in? And I think we do a really good job of that. And I think that extends. I think we put a lot of weight on the game, but it also extends outside of the game as well. I think whenever, I'll draw like a little example here, but whenever I run a bullpen, I ask the guy at the beginning, like, what do you want to get out of this? What is it you're looking to achieve today? And whatever that question is, or whatever that answer is, I hold them to that. So if it's, hey, you know what, we've been working on this hinge. I want to feel myself stay in it, not jump out of it as much. And I want to feel good about where I'm at up here. And then 5 pitches in, they're like, oh, I'm just yanking this heater. Like, I don't care about that today. You're going to learn that over time. Sure, there are cues that I can get you back over the plate, but I care that you feel good up here. So I think that we do a really good job with the individual and not making it about being a big leaguer tomorrow or even 6 months from now. The large majority of our demographic is going to be high school and college guys. So at best, your college guy is going to be 3 years away from the show, and your high school guy is going to be probably 6 to 7 at best, unless they're an anomaly and they're going to debut at 21. I think we treat the process as such. It's not about overloading this guy. The guy comes in, he goes, you know what, my slider and sinker and changeup have been really good. That's awesome. Let's throw a four-seam cutter and curveball. It's not about overhauling them to make them as good as they can possibly be in the scope of their career. It's about building the steps to allow them to be good for the next 10 to 15 years. And I think having success along the way aids that process. I want them to remain bought into what they're doing, and I want them to feel the growth as they go. I want them to start to simulate some of those thoughts in their head. I want those thoughts to be organic, because going through my career, a lot of it was mental. Like I talked about earlier, there's a couple mechanical tweaks that we're going to have with our high performing guys, but none of those are going to bring the return that the weight room does, or going through the mental thought of, what does my arsenal look like? How am I deploying it? What's my goal? What's my goal with this pitch? What's my goal in this situation? What is the game telling me to do right now? So I think we bring the game into the picture a lot more than other facilities. And I think that's helped guys a lot. And the reason I say that is, and I'm going to single out an athlete here. Chris Worley was probably, I love Luke LaCourse, and he was drafted in the 6th round, and they were both phenomenal high school pitchers. I think Chris Worley was the best arm in the state of Michigan this year. And he's a guy that came to me, and I had known him a little bit just through working part-time in off seasons and whatnot. But he came to me this past summer, so summer 2024, 88-91. And he was kind of spraying it, wasn't super confident in who he was. He was going to go play college baseball after this. We didn't focus on velo at all. And I think a lot of facilities who have a guy who's 88-91 look and say, okay, well, if we get him to 1-4, like maybe we're talking draft. All I wanted to do was see him have success, right? And that's all I wanted for. I didn't care if he was 87-90 or if he was going to be what he ultimately became was 92-95. We didn't focus on velo at all. I ran him through a mock fall to give him 10 innings to simulate the workload that he's going to have this fall at Virginia. We took a little bit of a deload. We were back on the mound in December getting ready for our pro day and spent the months of January, February, and the beginning of March all on the slope with a couple deloads mixed in. And all I wanted to do was teach him how to pitch, let him go through that growth himself. And he got to a point where he was commanding the ball better than a lot of my teammates in pro ball did. He's out there calling, hey, fastball glove side for a strike, slider glove side for a chase. And I've watched that kid go 18, 19, 20 in a row without missing. So to have that ownership of the arsenal, to spend that time there, and then to get the results back, it's a forgotten part of it just because of the on-field success and the change that it had this year. But to go from 88-91 to 92-95, that's no joke. And I think a lot of that is attributed to the confidence that he gained in himself on the mound, the weight room, and just the overall growth as a human. And I couldn't be more proud of that kid. But I think that's what makes us different, is that we look at things as the big picture. It's not, what can I do in these 6 months to make this kid as good as possible? It's, what does the kid need to do right now to keep him on the path to becoming a big leaguer at some point?
And then how do you make the connection back to the game? Because there's so many old heads now, whether you want to call them old heads or not. As a 32-year-old, I feel like that's a word I can use and not get too much pushback. But there's so much hate that facilities and technology gets of taking the focus off of the result and on the training result. So off of the game result. I know earlier we talked about the process versus the result. That's obviously from a training perspective when we were having that discussion. Now I want to talk
Right.
about the training goal versus the actual goal of the game, which is ultimately to win. So how are
Right.
you able to kind of bridge that gap? I know at the end of the day in a game, it's pretty simple. Did you win or did you lose? You mentioned the long-term development of these athletes. You mentioned bringing the game into the facility. So are there ways now that you bring that facility or preach that mindset and bring it back to the game?
Yeah. And I think I wrestle with this because, yes, it all boils down to winning. But the only way that happens is if we control what we can to the best of our ability. So I think that's the way that we teach it. I think one of the partnerships that we've established this year that I've been really happy with is with Paradigm Player Development Solutions. And what they do is they generate TrackMan reports based off of the data that we give them, the raw data. And through that, they're able to develop the Stuff Plus grades, and they're able to show us what the highest graded pitch of each category was. And they're also able to develop heat maps for us, showing us where their stuff is going to play best. And we talk about the objectivity of this and how it's just numbers and it doesn't provide, you need the coaching side of it as well to go with it. So it then becomes, okay, well, we know that your slider is going to play down and away to righties. We know that your fastball is going to play up and into lefties. Let's train that. Let's get really good at that because that's what's going to make you successful on the field. Furthermore, it's simulating the idea of, okay, these are the things that are important. We want to get ahead in counts. We want to get to advantage counts. And if we don't do those two things, we should be limiting free passes. This is not about chasing strikeouts. And that's probably a quote card but it is, the context behind that is we have to earn the right to chase those, right? We have to put ourselves in positions to go get those. And that can look different for many guys as to their approach to getting there. But it is very much still about getting ahead, getting to advantage counts. From there, that's when you can start to throw your stuff and create chase. I think there's other things that we do, competitive bullpens, live ABs. We can talk about that. But I think the idea, one of the things that we did with the Cubs, I don't know if I'm supposed to share this or not, but I'm going to do it anyway. We talked about categorizing counts, and that was one of our big strategies. And it's one thing that never worked for me, but I saw it work for so many other guys. So you have your strike counts, your competitive counts, and your chase counts. So when we go through these, bullpens, it's, hey, we're going to go left-handed hitter. This is what we know plays. You're going to be in a strike count. What are you going to throw? Right? And we can kind of walk through counts that way. So you're essentially simplifying the count down to where a kid's going to be on the mound. He's going to go, okay, full count, I got second and third, we're up one, or we're up, two, and I got two outs. I can probably throw a chase pitch here, right? As opposed to a competitive pitch. And that's really what I want to get to. So we're simulating all of these scenarios for them by simplifying the counts. You're standardizing things for the athlete. That way they go through the mental process of, okay, change up strike count. I'm going to throw this right through the Evil Shield logo on the catcher's chest protector. I'm going to let it fall to that lower arm side quadrant. Right? I'm going to trust this. I'm going to throw it exactly like a heater. It's going to do exactly what I want it to do. But the execution becomes so paramount to where when we're doing those bullpens, I'm not worried about what your back leg's doing. There's a different day to handle that. Right now, it is all about going and competing because at the end of the day, that's what matters. When you are on the mound in that game, all that matters is the confidence that you have in your stuff. I call it nuts over stuff, but it is absolutely that, right? I don't care in a game if your fastball is going to be 15 and 12. I don't care at that point, right? You have to go get outs with 15 and 12. Even if it's not 18 and 8, I'm going to need you to get outs with 15 and 12 because that's what's going to work today. So, but I think that there's a time and place to work on mechanical stuff or pitch shapes or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, when these guys are going through these pens where the goal is executing and working through that mental process of competitive count, right-handed hitter, I know this plays, this is where I'm going to throw it, this is what I'm trying to do with it. I think that's incredibly valuable, and we need to allow the athlete to retain that focus and not have it be divided up amongst other things as well.
If I can digest this and regurgitate it back to you, the way that I'm perceiving it is a lot of your transference is coming from very good player education on things that they
Yes.
can handle in the facility that is ultimately going to help them out in the real world.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to put it. I just spent like 10 minutes putting it that way, but that's perfect.
Well, I couldn't have gotten there if you didn't give me the 10
Yeah.
minutes. It's a tag team.
But no, I think that's a great way to put it because at the end of the day, kind of what I talked about earlier, I think when we talk about failure and you have to let guys go through that, I think the way I coach is very much tied to letting the thought be organic. So it is not about me telling you, okay, this is a 1-1 count. What kind of count is this? Competitive. What are we trying to do with this? Throw it low and glove side. It's me asking, okay, 1-1 count. What kind of count is that? What are we going to throw? Where do we know that plays? What are we going to try to do with this? Where are we going to start it? We want that thought process to be organic because that's what they're going to retain. That's an extension of these lessons that these kids learn are not told. They're observed almost, or they're organic. And I want that thought process to be the same for them because I feel like, and I can't prove it because I can't put it, I guess I could with their statistics, but you can't quantify what's going on in their head. I feel like that's what transfers to the field the best.
I love this route that we've gone down. And now, because you did mention Paradigm, I feel a little bad doing this, but I know the other partnership that you guys took on this year besides Paradigm was FlexPro. So if you
Yeah.
don't mind, I would love if you could just chat a little bit about your implementation of FlexPro, ultimately why you wanted to bring on FlexPro Grip, and then really what you've seen so far.
Yeah. So, I've been incredibly thrilled with our partnership to this point. So thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think they're another thing. I think it's an additive to our process that helps make us unique. And I think the simple way to put this is that, you have these facilities that chase really high performance or really high output. If you look at a unique individual, I want to do my best to put these athletes in a position to where they know that they're going to be healthy along the way. I think there's probably a crossroads between chasing high output and what the body is supposed to handle. And we're seeing that more and more nowadays. But I think there are things that we can do along the way that help us put us at least in a better positions to delay that. Our guys have really taken to it. Every guy looks at the device the same way the first time when they see it. They all get a little bit weirded out by it. But they do it. And then for 2 weeks, it's like, okay, well, my arm's a little sore. But then those 2 weeks come and go. And they're like, man, I feel better every day. Like I just I feel fresher. My arm feels better every day. And we're starting to look at, that we had 3 months, closer to 15, 16 weeks with these guys. We're starting to look at some of the differences just in terms of their spin rate, their efficiency, whatever it may be, that we can bring back to the FlexPro, that we can directly tie to the FlexPro. So the more athletes that we have, the more studies that we can run in-house and obviously quantify some of that development process. But I think that the underlying foundation of this is being able to trust that, okay, you have this objective feedback on your first assessment. and you're going to be able to show growth throughout 3 or 6 months or 9 months, however long you're working with us. I think that only aids the confidence that you're going to have when you're on that field. It's going to aid your confidence to bounce back from a green day, or, you're going to have 2 high intent pens in a week and you might be a little bit tight going into that one on Friday, or, your second one of the week. You're going to have a little bit more confidence to let it eat that day, knowing all the work that you've put into strengthening the muscles and stabilizing the joints that protect that ligament.
Thank you for running through that. I hate kind of asking for it, but we are at a
Yeah.
point where I do think the education of implementation helps a ton in what people are getting out of it. And obviously, you've been through it in your career. I mean, not TJ, but you've been through just about anything baseball life can throw at you. So it's awesome to hear just what you've seen in it, why you wanted to bring it on. But now shifting gears one last time, this is normally how I end episodes with former Pro Ball guys or guys who are currently in Pro Ball. Regardless, you have played damn near everywhere in the country. You've played or trained everywhere in the country.
Yeah.
What are a couple of the most unique or most memorable places that you have ever played? So it doesn't have to be the coolest, it doesn't have to be the best, but the one that really stands out in your mind.
So I think this is a good question. It's not just the best ones. If I was going to say the best, I would say Rocket City, because they were doing 8,000 on Wednesday nights and that atmosphere was electric.
That's
Um,
Huntsville, right? Rocket City Trash
yep,
Pandas.
yeah, that place is awesome. I think the most unique places. I think when I was down there at Bauer's facility, he had just opened it. He had just purchased that spot in Scottsdale, and just how pieced together it was at that time, right? It was kind of a ragtag group, like we're just getting after it. It's gritty, hole in the wall type stuff. I thought that was awesome. I was about that. Part of me wishes I went to the old Driveline because I respected everything that had transpired there beforehand. The facility was almost too nice that I went to.
Then you
So
should see it now.
I think the most unique field I played at, boy, this is good. I'm going to say Biloxi, even though I sprained my left ankle there and may or may not have flipped off a fan there. So you pull into Biloxi, and me and he's one of my best men at my wedding, Dalton Stanbaugh. Him and I would walk every morning to go get coffee in downtown, and we're staying right on that road, right off the Gulf of Mexico. We're walking downtown, and you're walking through these neighborhoods, and everything. There's just so much history there, with everything that happened with Katrina and not being built back up, and you're just like, you're also playing at the stadium and it's 95 and it's 100% humidity, but you're staring at the Beau Rivage Casino, right? And you kind of know where you're at on the map. It's such a unique place, and there's unique people down there. It's awesome. Just in terms of the entirety of the environment, the amount of stories that we had come from there. Obviously, properties being washed away, not awesome, but you can see all the history that's happened there just because it hasn't quite been rebuilt yet. And I thought that was one of the cooler trips we took, just being able to go see that. Shoot, Midwest League, I would say.
You're getting a lot of good stadiums in the Midwest League. The Midwest League's almost
Yeah,
too nice.
yeah, I would say Quad Cities probably stands out to me the most. And that's partly because that was my first start, was Quad Cities, and that was the best minor league team of all time. And that was Vinny Pascantino, Michael Massey, Nick Lofton, Michael Garcia, Asa Lacey was on that team. Anthony Veneziano was on that team. John Rave and Eric Cole. They had all these dudes that, like, Logan Porter was on that team, big leaguer. Like, this team just rolled through the Midwest League. You have the Ferris wheel in left, and you have the Mississippi River in right. It's just unique town with a bunch of local coffee shops, and just that was a cool spot to play as well.
Great answers there. Of course, there's no right or wrong. These are just your
Right.
experiences, and I love hearing them. So I appreciate you handling that with grace.
Of
Isn't
course.
it always kind of funny? Like the toughest question you have to answer is the one that like really should be the easiest. Like, hey, where'd you have
Yeah.
fun playing baseball? And you have to go,
100%.
my God, incredible question. Is
Yeah.
kicking your butt, just trying to say like,
Yeah.
hey, where'd you enjoy playing? As far as I'm concerned, that does it for me. I appreciate you stepping in and handling the heat today. Do you feel there's anything that we missed or anything else you want to get off your chest?
I don't think so, man. I just want to take the time to say thank you for having me on. I've enjoyed our conversation. This has been a ton of fun. This is my first interview in a while. But hopefully I landed the plane all right on some questions. I know I was a little bit long-winded, but I just want to thank you for having me on, and obviously I'm thankful for everything you guys do for us up here with our partnership with FlexPro.
Of course, man. This was great. And I guess one last ask for you is just share the socials or way people can get in touch with you or 3PD.
Yeah, yeah. So my Twitter personally is mbain_38. My Instagram is Max Bain Pitching. And then if we're looking at 3PD tags, I believe both of them are 3PD Performance with an underscore between 3PD and Performance. I think that's the case. I should know that.
I know that's the Instagram, 3PD
Yeah,
underscore performance, because I tagged it today.
let's see. Yeah, 3PD underscore Performance is the Twitter as well.
Great. Awesome. Well, Max, I appreciate the time. This was awesome. In classic 3PD fashion, you took the interview from the car, so we appreciate
Of
that.
course.
Yeah, just got to keep tradition strong. Until next time, I hope you enjoyed it. And to all the listeners out there, thanks for laying back with us.